Hello, this is Bill Webb, aka Billy Indiana, and today I have a special guest with me. This is Alex Hart from his channel Might I Suggest a Game. Glad you could be here, Alex. I'm really looking forward to sharing this evening with you, talking about a great game.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Bill. Like you said, I'm Alex from Might I Suggest a Game. I run a channel that's all about board game recommendations and suggestions. That's one of the things that got me into the hobby, and one of the things that I love to do to this day. I've been, playing and collecting board games, not for as long as many people in this hobby have, I think, but I've definitely taken it on wholeheartedly and really have enjoyed being a part of this community, especially a part of the YouTube community. So thanks for having me on, Bill. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, Alex and I met just through our YouTube channels, commenting on each other's videos, and through Instagram, commenting on each other's pictures, and just decided, hey, let's do a collaboration together. So we did one on Alex's channel a while back on some great games for playing outdoors, and tonight we're going to talk about parks. So Alex, I take it you've played parks quite a few times?
Yeah. So I originally played the original Kickstarter version, I think, at a local board game bar. I just kind of, I was intrigued by the box art. I picked it off the shelf, didn't know anything about it, and just got it to the table. And I'll tell you, the first time I played it, I was I was so-so. I was 50-50 on the game. But when they sort of did a second Kickstarter, a second reprint that had the expansion in it, the expansion kind of piqued my interest. And so I backed that Kickstarter and got that as a part of that campaign. And since we got that expansion, I'm sure we'll talk about it tonight, but I have really kind of enjoyed that and gotten it to the table with all kinds of different groups of friends and family and things like that.
Yeah, we kind of had a similar experience. I was really excited. It's so beautiful. And our first play, I think my wife and I were kind of trying to read the rules and play it together, and we enjoyed it, but it didn't really blow us away. But I think with every play, we've kind of grown to enjoy it more and more. And then, like you said, once we added that Nightfall expansion, I think that really boosted it even more for us. So it's a game we definitely enjoy.
Totally.
All right, so the way that I like to do my more full-fleshed out reviews is a 3x3x3 format. So we'll talk about 3 things that we really like about parks, and we have some overlap in our ideas, but they're all, I think, distinctly different. So we'll each share 3, and then 3 things that either we don't like or we could see maybe other gamers not enjoying so much. And we have a little more overlap there, but we'll still share some ideas. And then we also have some recommendations, thinking if you like parks or if you like the idea of the way parks plays, there are some other games that you might enjoy as well. So we're going to jump right in with the things we really enjoy about the game, and we'll just kind of alternate back and forth. I'll start on this set, and then maybe next set we'll let you go first, Alex. If that sounds all right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So the first thing, and we both already kind of mentioned it at our intro, is the art. This game, just like, this is the box cover, and just as soon as I see it, I'm like, wow, the art is incredible. The cards are part of this 59 Parks art project. And so all of the art on the cards is incredible. You've got nice little wooden meeples for your hikers. The game trays are just incredible with all the little pieces and stuff. So just that part blew us away right off the bat, and it's something we still really enjoy. It feels like a very deluxeified game.
Totally. Yeah, I like I said before, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio originally, and one of the more prominent artists in Cincinnati is a guy called Charlie Harper. And a lot of the art in the game reminded me of some of his like really beautiful abstract like nature pieces. And so, I just immediately drawn to the game. Like I said, it's, it makes you want to take it off the shelf. So I think that is, and once you open the box too, I mean, you really, it continues on in that theme. And I think so that kind of goes into that first thing that I'm going to talk about, which is that I really enjoy how thematic the game is, right? I think I've seen a lot of games with really beautiful art that, it's just kind of that, right? It's just something pretty to look at, but maybe it's just kind of a skin over top of something that doesn't really make sense. But really, it feels like this game was built in conjunction with that art, and it really feels like every single thing in there really makes sense. I live in the Northwest now, so plenty of hiking and parks around town. So the things like the canteen, like filling up your canteen, taking photos on the hike, I do a lot of that. The different weather patterns and the different seasons, and I think even just like the way that it sounds kind of weird, but even the way that the items are packed into the box, it's so efficiently packed in there. It makes me feel like I just am packing for a hike or something like that, just trying to get every little thing in my little hiking backpack. So even to that little detail, it feels really thematic, and you can just feel it at every turn you play.
Yeah, I totally agree. My wife and I love hiking, and as we're playing the game, I was like, "Oh, we got to go there. We got to go play that. We got to see that place."
Exactly.
And yeah, I agree. The little elements, like you talked about, the photographs and the canteens, it really does pull that theme out nicely.
Totally.
All right. Well, the second thing that I wanted to mention is something that we really enjoy is it's got a nice balance of complexity with simplicity for us, at least. We tend to like that medium weight to lower scale for our family. It's just easy to introduce to a lot of our friends who are not as much into gaming. And I feel like there's enough complexity there, especially if you add in that Nightfall expansion, it adds just a little bit more, where if you have people that are more into games, it's going to provide plenty of thinkiness for them and plenty of opportunities for them to try to strategize and adjust to the other players' actions. And yet it's not so complicated that you couldn't take someone who's a little newer to the hobby and kind of walk them through and get them going, play a couple seasons together. So I really like that balance of having that complexity and the depth of content where it's got good replayability as well, but without being too burdensome where it's going to be too hard to teach other players.
Totally. I totally agree with you there. I have, introduced it to, or taught it to new gamers recently. And I, taught it to folks who play a lot of games as well. And it's a different experience, certainly, but I think it works well with both groups. And I think that, in my experience, the two sort of types of players that I've played it with, you have either players that want to win, they just play games because they want to win, and that's, they're competitive players. And then there's players who just want to have fun, right? They just want to play it and have a good time. And I think this game, one of the things I really enjoy about this game is that I think this really works well for both types of players, because there is a little bit of competition. You're moving down the trail and, oh man, maybe you just went on the spot that I wanted to go on, or, like, oh, you took that park that I was going for, or something like that. So there's enough of that where you still kind of feel that tension, feel that competition throughout, but it's not mean at all. I really don't think, like, I don't feel like even when someone takes my park, a new one flips up and it's similar enough that I'm like, okay, maybe I can make this work, So I never really feel like it's going to drive people away who aren't competitive, which I think, sometimes games can overbalance one way or the other. So I really liked, especially with the Nightfall expansion as well, there's a plethora of actions you can take, and there's so many different ways to get to your end goal that even if one or two of your spaces that you need are maybe blocked up, you can get creative with the way that you move your hikers down the trail and really get to what you want to go.
Yeah, I agree. I that's my third thing is related to that in some ways. I love worker placement games, but I think this has such a unique thing of where the trail is one way. So you can't just go anywhere you want to put your worker. There's a lot of games where you are competing for spots, but this one you have to keep progressing down the trail as well as being limited on where you can go because of the other players' positions. And so just having to decide when to use that campfire to go where someone else is, and when to jump ahead, when to move your other hiker, and just that timing, that strategy. I really enjoy that. And I also like the progressive nature of the game where the trail keeps getting longer and you keep adding up more canteens and more gear, which gives you more ability to make good combos. And so it starts off kind of just nice and peaceful, and then it kind of grows and progresses and gets better and better and deeper and deeper. So I love that unique one-way track, and then I also just love that progressive nature of the game.
Totally. And I mean, again, going back to the theme, right? You know, you get better at hiking. The more you hike, the better you get, the longer you can go, you know? So I really like that, that expanding trail, you know, I think is, again, another really thematic piece.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, going off of that point, the last thing that I have for this category is that I really think it's great for players who play by their gut, I guess, is which is, I mean, that's pretty much, that's the type of player that I am, right? You know, I like to, you know, kind of lay out a general strategy, but I'm not like, okay, I have to do this, this, and this on this move and this move. I'm much more chaotic than that, which I think this game, because it not only are other players kind of affecting the things that you can do, but it's shifting every turn. You really can't like develop a solid concrete strategy until your turn comes up, you know? So it's really kind of, I really like that because it keeps you from having that kind of analysis paralysis. Like during other people's turns, there's a lot of, you know, in a lot of games, there's you could just spend the whole time analyzing, you know, and thinking about, well, I guess I could do this combo, or I could do this combo. And although there is definitely like thinking it's good to have a plan A, B, and C, you know, when you play this game, I still think like the decisions are simple enough that it doesn't make it a brain burner for me, which I think was a really good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I like the goal card at the beginning that kind of gives you a direction of something to pursue. But then, as you said, the whole time you might have that goal in the back of your mind. You think, oh, that card's going to be perfect. And then they take it. So then you're like, okay, now what's my best move? And so that constant changing of your tactics, of having sort of a bigger strategy, but always having to be on your toes. I really like
Totally.
that.
Yeah, totally.
Well, let's share some of the things that we either personally didn't care for or that we could see maybe other gamers may not enjoy as much. So why don't you start off this round for us, Alex?
Yeah, sure. I think kind of shifting into this, I would say I've played this game with a number of different player counts. I haven't played the solo variant yet, but I have played it, I think, with 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think I've played it with all the other different player counts that it allows. And I would say at the 4 and 5 player count, the trail can get a bit crowded, which, you know, it cuts down on the amount of, you know, when there are people on the trail in front of you, obviously there are actions that you can't take. And when when you're the last player to go in a 4-player game or a 5-player game, and there's 4 actions in front of you that are taken, it really like cuts down on the amount of things that you can do, you know, and it feels like all those actions that, oh man, it'd been nice to get some resources, like you kind of get screwed out of that. So I think in general, things can get a little crowded with more players, but I will say with the Nightfall expansion being included with the tent mechanism, I think that definitely helps you at least be able to have 2 options when you land on a specific space. Even if you didn't necessarily want to be on that space, at least you can have like, oh, well, I guess I could try this other thing as well. And a lot of those, you know, Nightfall actions as well kind of either duplicate or in some way replicate one of the actions on the trail as well. So I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, you kind of took the words out of my mouth on that one. My first thought that I had in terms of what I think maybe holds this game back in some ways, not a terrible thing, but I've played it solo and I like the solo, but I'm not a big solo player, so I probably wouldn't go back to that often. My wife and I enjoy it 2-player. We haven't played it 3-player yet, but played it 4-player with a number of groups and played it 5-player one time. And I agree, at that 4 and 5-player count, it can, well, although I'd have to say every time we've played it at 4 and 5 players, it's always had a fairly large number of new. Like it's been my wife and I and 2 people that have never played it, or my wife and I and 3 people that have never played it. So so I think that was maybe part of it, but I do agree that it kind of did slow it down. It feels a little bit crowded. And if you didn't have the Nightfall, it would probably be a bigger negative, but with the Nightfall, I agree that does alleviate some of that.
Totally.
So what's your next thought?
So I think in general, I will say I like the gear cards. I think that's kind of a nice thing. some of them are obviously more powerful than others, and I really like, there's some Nightfall cards in the expansion that allow you to flush the row more.
Yeah.
I sometimes play with a house rule where you just flush the row after every round, because I just like, I think it's important to kind of cycle some of those cards out. But there is one particular gear card that has come up, I think, in maybe 2 or 3 of the games that I've played. Enough now where if it comes up, I take it out, I put it at the bottom of the deck or something like that. But there's one specific gear card called the Parks Pass, or the Park Pass. And the Park Pass, essentially what it does is it gives you the opportunity to buy or to visit another park. So if you visit a park, you get to take that action again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in general, I think in the higher player count games as well, in the 4 and 5 player counts, I would say generally the limiting factor for people is how many times they can visit a park. It's not that they can't get the resources, it's that they just don't have enough actions, right? Because you can only, without that, the one spot on the trail, if that doesn't come up earlier on in the game, you really only got 2 chances to visit parks, in each round. So the ability to be able to go from 2 to 4 really makes it a little bit overpowered. So I've played a few games where somebody has got that specific gear card fairly early on and just kind of ran away with it, and it was like you could tell that, like, you obviously still have to get the resources for the cards, but you're just like, well, I guess I'll just buy that park and buy that park too. It's like it becomes a little bit less of a tight game when somebody has that amount of buying power.
Yeah, we've seen that come up, but so far for us, it's never come up early enough in the game where it seemed to make a big difference. But I can see how early in the game that would really change things a lot.
Yeah, especially before that one trail spot comes up that gives you a park action. When that isn't in play and nobody else can, like, use a campfire to get another park, visit another park, it becomes really powerful.
Yeah, and I'm going a little out of order because you made me think of something else I like about the game. But I like the fact that the trail is different every game because you're randomly picking them, and that you do scale it for the number of players to some degree. But it is interesting that depending on when that one part of the trail comes out where you can actually visit another park instead of waiting all the way to the end, if that comes out early in the game, where you get to see it multiple times, I think that really changes the flavor of the game.
Totally.
Yeah,
definitely. It just the final scores will be much larger, if you just have the multiple opportunities to hit that action. But I've played both. I've had it come up in the last round. I've had it come up in the first opportunity. So it definitely I like that, because then it adds the replayability of it. It changes, every game is different.
Yeah, agreed. So we kind of snuck back in another pro there. That's all right.
It's a good game. What can I say?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you were talking about an overpowered card, and I feel like without the Nightfall expansion, those year-end bonuses can be a little underpowered. It does give you a little guidance, which I enjoy because it kind of gives you something to shoot for, but often it's only a couple of points, and if you spend too much energy trying to follow that and it's just one card, at the end, it kind of feels like, oh, I just got 2 points or whatever. It feels a little like a letdown almost. But I really appreciate how in the Nightfall you have an opportunity to gain more of those. And so I think that was sort of corrected in that expansion to some degree, or at least made better in my opinion with that expansion. But I did think in the first original version that felt a little underpowered, I guess. But if you get the expansion, I really feel like it answers that problem.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like when I was teaching people before the expansion, when I taught a few folks, it was, you're gonna get this objective card, pay attention to it, but it's not that big of a deal. I would tell, it's like, focus on getting the parks, right? Because that's gonna be your big money maker. So
yeah,
I do like now how the Nightfall expansion ones have you can kind of combo them. You can get multiple. It's almost like the Wingspan objective cards where you can get like multiple instances of it, which can really turn the tides, I think, which is good.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Well, so my last one for this category, I think, is kind of goes off of that, teaching it to new players, which I have had the opportunity to recently. Actually, my most recent play was with 3 new players who hadn't played it before, and one of the biggest piece of feedback that I kept getting as we were playing the game is they were like, man, there's a lot of things to choose from. There's a lot of things you can do here. You know, I'm just like, I would say, like, you know, as someone who has played some pretty heavy games in the past, like, I'm like, well, you know, okay, yeah, there's like whatever, 5, 6 things you can choose from or whatever. But I can see as a new player who has maybe played, you know, Catan or something like that, you know, it's less railroaded, right? There's a lot more variants that you can pick. I do think that the factor of having, you know, hikers on the trail and you can't go onto their spaces definitely limits that selection and helps that. But I would say for new players, if you're not used to seeing that sort of variance, you know, it can lead to some analysis paralysis and just kind of feeling like you don't really know what you should be doing, I guess. And part of that, I'm sure, is me explaining it poorly. But you know, I you know, it's probably, I'm gonna blame it on the game. I'm blaming it on the game.
I had a similar experience teaching the game. Just it takes a couple rounds before they kind of feel less overwhelmed. I think the first couple rounds are just trying to figure out where they should focus their attention. So there is a fair bit there. And the first few rounds go pretty slow when they're trying to think through all of that. So I would agree. I think that's something that just to be aware of if you're thinking about this game, and especially if you're going to teach it to a large number of new players at once.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, my last one in this category is that, and this is, I'm sure, just a me issue, but for whatever reason, a lot of the icons on the cards, they should make sense, but they just don't for me. I'm constantly having to look, now, what does that one mean again? And it's not even like there's a ton of them, but for some reason, I'm constantly having to look back at the rules about those icons. My wife seems to have much more of an intuitive feel for what they mean, but for me, I just cannot get that sunk in. So I imagine it's just an individual issue for me, but maybe that would impact some other players. I don't know. It doesn't make me not like the game, but it is something that every time I play, I'm like, what is that again? And we've played it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely an abstract style. So, you know, if it's not like, I wouldn't say it's straightforward. It's not a direct iconography necessarily. So it's more of like, it's like you just have to like memorize the glyphs or something like that. You just have to, but yeah, definitely agree. It can be, I've played it with my parents and I think, you know, their first time playing it as well, it was very much like, I can't really, and it's like across the table from me, I can't really tell what that's going to do. So yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I think a lot of games kind of have tried a lot of different things with icons, and I don't know that there's any one game that's like, wow, that's the perfect iconography, you know. So you know, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so we've talked about the things we like, and I think overall we would both say this is a game we really enjoy. We've played it enough that we wouldn't keep playing it if we didn't enjoy it, and we both have played it a fair bit, and we've enjoyed teaching other people. So if you're going to take the time to want to teach other people, I think that also shows that we both really enjoy this game. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit. If people either have played Parks and like it, or maybe they just like what we've discussed and think, wow, that sounds like a game that I would like, but maybe Parks isn't available where they live or they can't get it at the stores near them or something. Let's give them some other recommendations that they can maybe even expand the repertoire. So I'll start with one. And this one is more of a theme. If you like the theme of Parks, I think this other one would be one that you would enjoy as well. And I actually have it here. It's Trekking the National Parks, which so definitely obviously is going to be a similar theme. But it's a little more than the theme. The art also is similar in that you are going to visit parks and it shows actual pictures of the parks and there's factual information about the parks, kind of like in Keystone's parks. But there's, I think it's maybe slightly simpler. You have some set collection issues and you have some end game bonuses, but instead of them being private, they're public. And so I think that changes a little bit. And instead of collecting the resources, you're collecting cards with emblems and getting the emblems to match up to visit the parks. But there's a lot of similarity in the way it plays. I think it's slightly simpler, but same kind of theme and same kind of beautiful appearance to the cards and such. So have you happened to play that one?
I haven't had a chance to play that one, but I do think like one of the reasons why I have introduced Parks to so many people is because the theme people love going to the national parks. It's just
Yeah.
like it's an American tradition, and things like that. So I've introduced it to a lot of friends that love to hike or get outdoors and just really like going to the parks and stuff like that. So I'm sure this recommendation is great for that, because I think that's one of the biggest kind of draws of parks or trekking the national parks is that sort of theme that makes you like, okay, yeah, I should get outside and like go see these parks.
Yeah. So what's one you have in mind?
Sure. Yeah. I want to start off by saying I'm glad that we're doing recommendations. That's my favorite thing to do. I'll have to say, might I suggest perhaps before I say each
Go
one.
for it.
The first game that I'll say is, might I suggest, Tokaido. So Tokaido is, I found a lot of similarities between Tokaido and parks. Tokaido doesn't take place in the national parks. It takes place in the beautiful countryside of Japan. Mm-hmm. And I think, but in a really similar way, I think, first of all, the art is really immersive the same way that parks is. So you really feel like you're there and you're experiencing all the different things along the way. You can go to the hot springs, you can go to the temple, you can go to the market and all kinds of different stuff. But it also kind of has that track movement. So in the same way as parks, you are moving along this track. You can't move backwards. There's a limited amount of spots on each space that you can go to. So if someone is taking up that spot, you can't go on that space. So that sort of linear track movement that parks has is really similar in Tokaido. But really, it's just kind of, to me, it's just transporting you from the Americana to the sort of the Japanese road, and Tokaido is one of the first games that I added to my collection, and one of the most beautiful. I just really love the art in it, and so that sort of, they really feel like kind of different sides of the same coin to me.
Yeah, I've only played that one digitally, but I really like it. It is beautiful. And I think also that both games just feel like you're going on a hike or you're going on a stroll. Like they just feel calming and like they're comfort games to me. I like the way they both make me feel.
Totally. I totally agree with that.
So my second recommendation is more on, it's definitely not about the theme, but more on that one-way track. Since that idea is something that I really like about parks, I thought, well, what other game has that? And one that we enjoy that has that is Patchwork. Now, we only have the Patchwork Express version, but in this one, you can only move one direction. And you're also trying to predict or try to anticipate what's best for me. Should I use one of these that's going to make me go far? Should I use one that's going to make me go a shorter distance? So kind of like on the trail, you're like, should I go one step? Should I jump quick to get that so they don't take it? So there's that little bit of a feeling of when should you go far? When should you go short? And also then the drafting nature where you're drafting the pieces to make your patchwork quilt as opposed to drafting different cards from the game in parks. But those two elements kind of reminded me, even though in a lot of other ways it feels very different and far simpler. I think it is that one-way track kind of just reminded me. So if that's something you like about parks, you might want to try Patchwork for that similar feel that way.
Yeah, I would love to see a parks and Patchwork combo.
Nice.
I really, that would be great. I'd love to do a little tile placement, making my park. Like maybe you don't draft the whole park, maybe you only get part of the park and you get to make your own national park or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, sounds like a great game.
We'll see. Yeah, that's my pitch. We'll see what happens. So I think you mentioned drafting in your suggestion there, and I want to kind of piggyback off of that. The sort of card drafting and the way that you lay the cards out in the market and you'll draft those into your tableau really reminded me of kind of the Seven Wonders franchise. That's obviously a very well-known and fairly common franchise, but I think not only drafting the cards, but also getting cards getting like the gear cards to help you draft better, I think really reminded me of that, especially Seven Wonders Duel. That's one that we played 2-player a lot, my wife and I, and I'd say, it's all about, you get resources as an investment to then help you get more wonders or get more whatever abilities and other cards. And in the same way in parks, you're drafting, you're buying gear cards that will sort of help you combo and get those parks a little bit easier when you have the opportunity to. So I really felt a lot of similarity with that. And you know, if you want to explore the ancient past, right, the ancient sort of Greek and Roman era, that's definitely kind of more in the same vein. And if you're looking for a really great 2-player experience, I'd say Seven Wonders Duel. Might I suggest Seven Wonders Duel? How about that?
Yes, we love the Seven Wonders games, both the regular game. We've got several expansions for it, and then we play Duel quite a bit as well. And I agree, the drafting and also just that resource management of trying to get this card so I can get the resources to get that card. And yeah, it feels that part feels pretty similar as well. I like that. Oh, my last one, the first thing that made me think about it is just another game that I think is very pretty and kind of countryside. And it also has, you know, worker placement, but it's a little more traditional than worker placement, but it has sort of a seasons feel and rounds feel like the parks does. And you're fulfilling orders, but in this case, instead of fulfilling an order to go visit a park by collecting those resources, you're filling an order to sell wine. And so Viticulture is my third recommendation. It's, I think, a little bit heavier game. There's a little bit more going on, but it also has, you know, mama and papa cards and things that are kind of like the gear cards where it's giving you a different action or a different ability to use. And the art of this one, I just love the way it makes me feel. Even though it's maybe a little heavier, I don't think it's a lot heavier. And I like that I can play it solo or 2-player. It just feels good at just about any player count. And while Parks kind of slows down at bigger counts, I still really enjoyed it. And I feel like everyone who played still did as well. So yeah, that's why I would suggest, might I suggest, Viticulture, which goes right along with your theme as the board game sommelier, right?
Exactly. I love Viticulture. It's one of my favorites. That's just what you were saying about the higher player count. So one of the things that's really nice about Viticulture is I think I played that one with 6 or something like that. I played that with a pretty large group, and you know, it's a longer game. It's definitely more heavy than Parks, but the cool part about that one is there is that, like, because it's a worker placement game, you know, there's always going to be somebody on your spot that you want to be on and you can't be on that spot, but there's more actions that you can take. So then you can just be like, well, I'm gonna sell a field because nobody's doing that, you know, and you just take the kind of contrarian option, and you can still kind of create a winning strategy there, which is cool. So
yeah, making the best that you can out of what you've got, kind of like in Parks.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that sort of action scarcity kind of goes into my last suggestion here. And you know, because I think one of the things about Parks that I haven't really seen in a ton of other games is really, like, if somebody's on your space, you can't be on that space. And that's like a you know, an absolute, right? That's not like, you have the campfire. The campfire will help you, but you can only use it once. And then after that, you really, you have to write that off and either wait for someone to move or, you know, that's it. Right. And so that part, I think really reminded me of Agricola, which I played a little while ago for the first time. And, you know, in that one, if someone's on the actions you want to take, you're out of luck until the next round, because that, you know, they're not moving. They can't move, you know? And so that sort of action scarcity makes you plan differently, you know, because it's like, well, I want to get on to that action that I really need to take before anybody else does. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to, like, risk it to go for it sooner because I really don't want anybody else to take it, you know? So I think there's that sort of, you know, action scarcity is what I'm calling it, as well as that provincial life, you know, in Agricola, you know, you're a farmer making your farm, getting wheat and carrots and your sheep and things like that, you know. So if that sort of countryside lifestyle really appeals to you, then, you know, might I suggest Agricola.
And that's one game I still haven't played. It's such a classic, and I still haven't been able to get that one to the table. So I got to find a friend who owns that one that lives close enough that I can actually join them and have them teach it to me.
That's what I did. I borrowed it from a friend.
Oh, yeah, I'd really like to try that one, but haven't had a chance yet. Well, hopefully those recommendations are helpful for you. Hopefully just our thoughts on what we really enjoy about parks and the few things that maybe turn us off a little bit, or at least we see as slight negatives. As we said, we love the game, and we love other games that have a lot of similar mechanisms and similar feels to them. So hopefully this was helpful for you to hear some of that. Alex, I'm sure some people that are watching this video, they're going to want to know, hey, how can I get in touch with Alex? How can I follow Alex? So remind us again, how can they get a hold of you or follow you?
Sure. Well, I'm on YouTube as Might I Suggest a Game? You can just type that in. I should be the first one that pops up. And you can, if you go there, you should definitely watch the other collaboration video that me and Bill did earlier about games that you can play outdoors. It's just some quality content. You won't want to miss it. And then you can find me on Instagram at Might I Suggest a Game with periods in between each of the words there. And then if you really want to get into contact with me, you can just email me. If you really want to, like, you know, talk chalk or something like that, right? You know, you can find me at mightisuggestegame@gmail.com. So.
All right, great. Thanks for wearing the hat today too. I mean, that's one thing I don't always wear it, but usually do. And even with, I love the classic Bengals there. That's really, you were telling me about having grown up in Ohio and being a Cincinnati fan. So love it.
Hey, you know, you wore the blazer for my video, sneak peek. And so I had to wear the hat for your video.
Well, thanks so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you this evening and just to talk about a game that we both really enjoy. I love watching your channel. In fact, earlier today, I was trying to start watching the one you just put up today about good games you can find at Target. I look forward to watching the rest of that later tonight. So check out Alex's channel. He puts out great content. He's got a great sense of humor, really high quality stuff, does a great job with editing, far better than I do with my videos. So he's very talented and has great taste in games from my side of, or my point of view. So definitely check him out. And Alex, thank you so much for spending this time with me tonight.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Anytime you want to talk about one of these great games, you let me know.
All right. Thanks so much. And for all of you watching, we'd love to hear your comments down below. If you think we got it wrong on something, or if you think we got it right, or if you have other recommendations, leave those comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching. This is Billy, Indiana, signing off.